There's a line where it's like 100% you cannot just like come and just take someone's story and then, you know, run with it and not give anything to the community. Like there's a responsibility that you have. Actually very tricky, especially more and more these days, with the conversation being who has the right to tell the story, because there's a line where it's like 100% you cannot just like come and just take someone's story and then, you know, run with it and not give anything to the community. Like there's a responsibility that you have. And at the same time, the point of film and cinema and acting is playing pretend, is taking on a role, is writing a fiction. Like that, not everyone can make a film exactly about their experience and can be limited to only that. So it's a very tricky thing, because I find myself being upset when, like, you know, a white American just like comes and takes a story about Beirut and, you know, hires a bunch of Americans and then goes and shows it over there. And I get really upset, like, how dare you? But at the same time, obviously, I am not a construction worker, as you said, and all that stuff. So on one hand, what I think is, well, on one hand, on a personal level, I'm also Syrian. My parents are both Syrian, and, you know, my family, my culture is very much Syrian. And I've felt the feeling of, you know, growing up in Beirut, having a Syrian accent, and, you know, Lebanese people and, like, you know, teenagers, kids are just brutal with catching. Even the difference is so small between these two countries that are so close to each other. But the language...
بين ورشة وورشة.
Exactly. ورشة أنا كنت أقول باب فاصولية فاصوليا بعقولها. Lots of teasing happened, and I really worked on myself to like get that accent out so that I wouldn't feel that. And, you know, Lebanon and Syria have a big history, and it's kind of love-hate. It's kind of complicated. There's the political stuff, there's the neighbor stuff. Like, workers have been coming to work in Lebanon, construction workers through Syria for ages, but, you know, there's always this like, there's a rejection and an attraction between these two places. And I've always felt it already belonging to these two cultures. Like, people in Lebanese, you know, Lebanon would start saying, like, I can't stand the Syrians. And because my accent's not there anymore, they wouldn't know that, you know, I'm one of the persons they're referring to, or like they wouldn't censor themselves. So those are definitely things I felt. And then when it comes to working in construction, it was a lot of research. I spent a lot of time. A friend of mine, Hamad Ghutmi, who was an engineer and works on construction sites, he took me many times to construction sites where we would meet people and talk to people and just kind of gather as many stories as possible. I think part of the responsibility of filmmaking when you're making a film that's not your own is to include a lot of the people in the filmmaking process. So it's like we are all telling the story together. I'm using my skill, which is the cinematic language, but like the extras in the film, all the extras in the film are all construction workers that we met in one of our site visits. The two secondary characters, actors, are Syrian actors as well, who I gave them a script with like, this is kind of what I want the message to be, but please say it in your way, like what feels natural. So they wrote their own lines and they improvised their own lines. And that's how it becomes a collective telling of the story. Same thing with Khamsa. He brought his own experience of Muhammad. He relates to what it feels like to grow up in a very masculine world that does not appreciate art or feminine types of art as well within a man's world. And he had to really always run and find these moments where he could express himself freely and where he could be himself.